I did two wildly different things this weekend. I was out at a place called Bombay Beach, which is a sort of funky art community in the Salton Sea in the Californian desert. So I was out camping in the desert and then watching a bunch of art cars drive by, and they had set up a big sort of performance festival out there. So there's very Burning Man vibes. There was an opera in the desert, and then after that, I had to hose myself off and put on a suit and go give a talk about the Middle East in in Orange County, California, with
Ooh,
a guy who negotiated the peace deal with the FARC. So it was a wildly different experience from one thing to the next this weekend.
dude, I am not a camper. I cannot be going camping. I commend you on your commitment to the outdoors. Could never be me.
It's not really a commitment as much as it is an ability to be brutalized by the outdoors. That's what
There
I
you go.
find. Yeah, and it was rough this weekend because it was over 100 each day.
It was
Uh,
hot. Oh
oh my
no.
gosh, it was so bad. It was so bad. I had a buddy of mine come out, and we were like, "This is an unsustainable amount of heat." So we escaped to an RV park where we found a pool.
Oh,
I
good.
didn't realize that RV parks have some really nice amenities in them.
Yes, I lived in a trailer park in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee at one point in my life when I was working for Dollywood, which was crazy. And
What?
it was my most favorite place I've ever lived. Dollywood has this little it was like being in the circus. And basically, I was living in Manhattan. I auditioned in Manhattan. I got brought down to do the Christmas show with a couple other people. And they have like real high level talent for their Christmas show. So they even get like big Nashville stars to come in and do it. And they put you up in this entertainment trailer park that's like right across the street from Dollywood. And
Whoa.
it is the greatest time I maybe ever had in my life because everyone has like a trailer, like a literal, like you would like it's a trailer park,
Yeah.
and you share it with one other performer. So basically, you're all going in, performing all day, and then it's just like theater camp at night. It was the most fun I had ever had in my life.
That sounds amazing. Wait. What were you performing while you were out there?
So I was in a show that was called Babes in Toyland. It was the very
Oh,
first
I
time they
know
did
Babes
it.
in Toyland. I got a theater
Yes.
degree too.
Heyo. Yeah, because all the theater kids are thriving right now. We're just out here doing public policy, helping people because we're like, I don't know. Broadway didn't
People
work out. I guess I'll run the government.
people don't realize that the theater kid to national security pipeline is narrow,
Strong.
but the velocity is high.
It is strong. Yes. And when you work at Dollywood, the fun things that happens is depending on which show you're in, but I was in a show that she opened, right? So she was in like the first couple of weeks of it and whatnot. You have to go to Dolly University because you have to do the fan line with her, which is like, so after the show, she stands and signs autographs for hours, hours. This woman is incredible. And I remember the first time I was like, God, this is a long time do we really greet every single person? And she's like, yeah. She's like, when in your life else will you be able to stand in a line and have thousands of people say how much they adored you? Why wouldn't I stand in this line? And I was like, of course we would. And so I learned everything about like, just crowd appreciation from her. But you have to go to Dolly University because the fans will test you. They'll be like, when's Dolly's birthday? When's this? How many siblings does she have? They'll take pictures of you and they'll give them to you at the very next show. And they give you notes on your performance. And they're like, I really like the way that you chose the opt up on this time you sang the song. Or I noticed like you looked a little tired, so I brought you some cake. Like the best fans in America are Dollywood fans. They're just awesome. But they give you a little card that says I'm with Dolly and has your picture on it. And essentially you can go anywhere on in Pigeon Forge or Gatlinburg for free. Like they keep a tally and then she pays for it later. So we would go to like
What?
Ripley's Believe It or Not. We would go to like the Big Bear Jamboree. We would go to Jesus. the dinner theater show Jesus. Like, it was incredible.
I was like, is Jesus a place or a sort of state of mind? Like, did you get saved by Dolly?
I was saved by Dolly. It was, yeah, I should probably tell more stories about my theater kid time because I think it was like the craziest, most fun time. This was 2006, Christmas
Is this in the
2006.
book? This should be in the book. I feel
It's
like
not
Dolly
in the
would.
book. I
What?
should put it in the book. I know. The book is so about like my political life afterwards, but I should definitely put it in, which was
It's
great.
nothing more political than Dolly. I feel like she. Well, I may maybe it's just that's kind of what we should aspire to, right? We want to transcend politics, and I
Me
think that
too.
there's everybody who like can appreciate like Dolly or like Reba McEntire or like
Mhm.
who are the or Willie Nelson transcends politics,
Yes. Leanne
right?
Rimes also, which
100%.
Leanne Rimes was performing when she was doing like her theme park tour for a while where she was young and I was working at Six Flags at that time in New Jersey. I did a lot of theme park and I was doing the country show there and she was doing like at the big arena in New Jersey, she was doing her thing. And but her camp that travels with her brings like all their own smokers, all their own food. It's very community driven, or at least it used to be back then. Like when anybody was on tour, it was like a family thing. And so she came over to like our little holding area. And I'm dressed like Miss Kitty from the Miss Kitty Saloon. Okay, so just
Yep.
picture old timey saloon broad. That's what I'm dressed
Yep.
like when I meet Leanne
Yep.
Rhymes. And she had brought us like chicken and biscuits and like ribs and things that they had cooked. And she's like, I don't know if y'all are hungry, but we've got plenty extra if you want to stop by. And so we got to like hang out with Leanne Rhymes for the weekend when she was
I
like doing her like peak, Patsy Cline game as a kid. It was insane.
I feel like she also had like a big jug with three X's on it as
She
well,
probably
given
did.
that given
No,
that
that's what I
menu.
had for a stage prop. I mean, but yeah, I do miss this idea of I don't know if it's like that anymore because people have phones now. We didn't have phones. We had mandatory Bible study on Wednesdays and Sundays.
No way.
Mhm.
Is that legal as a part of like a
Well, you are opting in.
job?
It's voluntary, but
Okay,
it's
okay.
it's voluntary mandatory, but I enjoyed it. I was like, because it wasn't like fire and brimstone-y, it was like
Sure.
Dolly Church. So it was like, today we're going to talk about the Good Samaritan, and we would learn about like the Good Samaritan and why you should be grateful. And it was really cute. So it was fun.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
God, well, it sounds like you're gonna have to write another book, unfortunately.
I know. Or there's still time to add a little bit. I should add about the Dolly stuff. She was fantastic. But let's get
Dolly's.
started on
Yeah.
the horrors that persists today, because unfortunately for us, it's 2026 and not 2006.
Ugh, simpler
Although
times.
I bet I could still play harmonica if I tried. A little trick I learned backstage at Dollywood, that and how to play cards. Um, Eric, you are very good at helping people understand terms that they're going to be hearing a lot. And so I wanted to start with two terms I saw on your channel this week. One was entrapment, and what people need to know about entrapment as Donald Trump continues to try to say, well, we got tricked into doing the war in Iran. No, we're not stuck over there in the Strait of Hormuz. There's nothing. So, like, geopolitically, what is entrapment?
Yeah, so entrapment is unfortunately a term that it appears should probably become a little bit more common in people's understandings, and that is when you have essentially a smaller actor that has divergent aims in a conflict from you. So you've got a smaller actor and you've got a larger actor,
Mhm.
and they are sort of pushing forward to get the larger actor sort of stuck inside of that conflict. So you can see pretty clearly that there was some alignment in between the war aims of Israel and the United States, and now those are diverging greatly. You can see
Mm.
that in terms of the U.S. attempting to backpedal, while Israel is attempting to push the U.S. forward. And
Mhm.
so this entrapment is happening. It's sort of taking the form in a couple of different ways, right? So one, you'll see really aggressive airstrikes on behalf of the Israelis, and then the U.S. will have to either back them up in some respect, or they will have to say, "Oh, they did that thing, but like, we told them not to." The tempo of conflict is really set often by the most aggressive actor. And then
Mhm.
the escalation ladder, as you sort of climb this escalation ladder, eventually will resolve itself based off of who can sustain longer.
Mm.
And so now that we are seeing greater market effects, it looks like the U.S. is attempting to try and pull itself out of this situation, but that doesn't really matter because it seems like Israel has sort of pushed us so deeply that we're having a hard time sort of extricating ourselves. So one of the things that I would sort of look for is how much is the U.S. able to constrain any sort of belligerent action that the Israelis are going to take unilaterally?
Mhm.
Because there are certain things that Israel simply cannot do. So Israel can't put boots on the ground. They
Right.
can't sustain soldiers in theater. The U.S. can, and it appears that is what the sort of Israeli government has been hoping for in terms of the U.S. Also, there's some chatter about Saudi Arabia and the Gulf countries sort of encouraging this as well. But again, the problem has always been the goals are unclear, and when the goals are unclear, then the goalpost can move pretty rapidly. And when you
Mm.
have a smaller partner that has what they perceive to be an existential threat, then they have every incentive in the world to entrap their larger, more militaristic partner.
Someone just described this as Israel's like the short kid that uses their big, strong, but kind of dumb cousin to fight their battles. And
That's
yes,
exactly right.
yes, that
Yeah.
is what it feels like. It feels
Yeah.
like bully politics across the board. I think that's helpful for people to understand because I think like the civilian understanding of entrapment is like, oh, when the police kettle you at a protest and try to just trap you somewhere. But this is like even a little bit more than that. It's forcing us to continue to fight in a war that's deeply unpopular with the American people, that's unwinnable, and that doesn't necessarily benefit the goals of the United States as opposed to the partner goal, which is not great.
Yeah, the divergence in goals is really interesting right now, and it's so hard to sort of shuffle through what is and isn't real in terms of what people are saying.
Mhm.
If you look at the Iranian point of view, if you look at Iranian news, they have sunk our carrier strike groups like 40 times.
Mhm.
And if you look at the U.S. news, we have won and destroyed their entire navy like 30 times.
Mhm.
So it's incredibly difficult to determine what's actually going on the ground
Mhm.
when both sides are lying. So the only thing that you can really do is look at the stuff that's moving around and
Mhm.
look at the stuff that's blowing up and look at the stuff that they are unable to do. So, a good example of this would be, I think it was Spain and Italy have just said, "Hey, you can't use our airspace anymore." This is
Mm.
huge, right?
Mm.
Because the majority, like the major U.S. air bases, are coming from Germany. So if you can't fly through Spain, you can't fly through Italy. That's a lot of airspace
Mm.
that you are no longer able to use in order to get into theater. And one of the reasons that we've been using European bases so much is because, well, one, they're large bases, but
Oh, your mic just cut out. Hold on one sec. Yep. Okay, I got you.
yeah.
Sorry, your mic cut out. So why can't we use the bases? Are we being censored? We're being targeted, Eric.
No. I So one of the reasons we can't use the bases is because they're being targeted.
Right.
We had a pretty good system of bases in the Gulf countries, in Saudi Arabia, in even Iraq, but all of those have been targeted and are to put material and personnel in those bases.
Mm,
So the closest one that we can probably use in a really robust way is a base called the Incirlik Air Base, which is in Turkey.
mm.
Because anytime something that has come near Turkey, they shot it down, and Iran went and apologized to Turkey. So nobody wants to mess with Turkey, which is probably pretty accurate.
The
Um,
yeah, that tracks.
yeah,
That makes sense.
yeah. They're big. They're real big.
They're wild over there.
Shout out to Turkey. I'm banned from
Yeah.
entering.
Oh, good. Oh, good. I think that's like a little badge of honor, maybe,
Yeah.
perhaps. They're like, Eric can't come in here. That feels good for us. Folks want to
Hammams
know,
are great.
yeah, if gas prices will continue to increase. Yes. I because I'm not doing airplanes right now, drove both to Indiana, which was a 7-hour drive, and then drove to New York this past weekend, back and forth. And I like was standing at the gas pump and wrote a little song to entertain my wife who was in the car, which was I'm paying $5 a gas. It was like in just I know I shouldn't have been surprised, but when it came up $5, I was like, I know that this is, I live in Rochester. Gas is usually around like $3. I was like, this is a significant difference. And it didn't get better, going to Indiana. It certainly didn't get better as I got down into New York. And we will see gas prices continue to climb. We have not hit the worst part of the gas prices. Even if he stopped today,
Yeah.
it would continue to be bad.
Yeah, and there's also another there's another choke point that is very likely to become active as again we sort of climb this escalation ladder, and that's
Mhm.
the Bab el Mandab, which is the sort of another one of these straits that is right between
Oh, I have an
basically.
image for you. Here we
No
are.
way! Look at
Yes,
that!
the 4 checkpoints,
Whoa!
choke points blocking maritime trade. Here's the Strait of
Oh,
Hormuz,
yeah,
Panama
and then
Canal.
just to the left of it is the Strait of the Bab el Mandab, or the Gate of Tears, called that because it was just so dang hard to sail through. So the Bab el Mandab is where the Houthis are hanging out, and so
Hmm.
again, we have a similar strategy here. The amount of sea mines you actually need to lay in the ocean in order to close the Strait of Hormuz is zero, because
Mhm.
you just need to say that you did it, and no ships will want to roll through there because it's just so preventatively expensive to insure them. Same deal with the Houthis and the Bab al Mandab. The amount of missiles they need to fire is actually zero, but if they fire one, then no ships are going to want to sail through the Suez Canal up towards Egypt. And what that accounts for is something around between 20 and 25% of all the container ship traffic in the world, but also around 15% of the energy that specifically goes to Europe and then also into Asia.
Mhm.
So obviously, and also this was famously probably like one of my favorite news stories of like the last decade was when that boat got stuck in the Suez Canal because it
Mhm.
was so sort of politically ambivalent. It was just like clearly an accident.
Mhm.
And then like everybody like everybody in the world raced to try and get this boat unstuck. And I was like, this, we can solve large problems if they're highly capitalized, clearly. But this affects it affects oil prices most certainly.
Mhm.
Not because it's going to affect American oil. This is a really important thing that I think that a lot of people are sort of seeing in the gas pump, but not really grasping throughout the entire world. Right. So the United States is more than capable of giving itself oil. We are the
Mhm.
majority oil producer and oil exporter in the world. We passed Saudi Arabia in 2019. However, oil is a global market, so it's not like we can just sell to ourselves. And of course, the petro petrodollar is such that the dollar is basically backed by the price of
Mm,
oil. And so when the supply of oil is reduced, that means that the price of oil, no matter where it's coming from, no matter where it's going
mhm.
to, is going to go up. So the issue is not that the US is running out of oil, it's just that the lack of supply means oil everywhere gets way more expensive. And so Suez, or pardon me, the Bab al Mandab, which goes through to the Suez Canal, if that gets cut off in more robust way, we started seeing Houthis enter the chat this last weekend. Then yeah, we could have two choke points cut off, which is sucky.
Yeah. Good question from the audience here. What's up with Donald Trump allowing that one Russian ship to kind of like cruise up into Cuba? And what's the long game with Cuba right now?
Yeah. Oh man. Okay. I'm so glad that this was a question. So this is a wild game of realpolitik diplomacy, in my opinion.
Hmm.
So it's really interesting watching this play out, right? What I think that this is a sort of calculated moment of stepping the negotiations to the side. So you have this enormous ramp up of sort of do or die tension within your negotiating capabilities, right? You have essentially a humanitarian crisis that is about to take place in Cuba, with at the same time a good deal of media personalities who are also on the island. So that really does not look good for the international
Hmm.
audience. Meanwhile, you have this Russian tanker coming in with not enough oil. So they have about 730 thousand barrels of oil. So that
Hmm.
is about enough to fuel Cuba for between a week and 15 days, probably more like 15 days with the amount of rationing. So what this does is it buys time for the negotiation process. So it
Hmm.
takes a little bit of the tension out. It also avoids some of the humanitarian issues, which the U.S. doesn't really want to see coming out of Cuba. And then at
Hmm.
the same time, it was also a really sort of smart move on Russia's behalf because
Hmm.
one, they look like the sort of like anti-imperialist power, despite their imperializing. But
Hmm.
they also say, well, what are you going to do? Are you going to like launch a missile at a Russian boat? Technically, this is not a Russian boat, actually. This is a shadow fleet. But are you going to essentially take out directed Russian supplies? And we do not directly fight with Russia.
Hmm.
So this is all sort of like the part of this larger strategic picture. Are we going to see sort of Russia becoming the sole lifeline for energy
Oh, God.
for Cuba? Unlikely,
Yeah.
but you have seen an interesting change in policy, and it was kind of quiet. And this change in policy was, hey, the United States does not mind if anybody sends oil to Cuba. The regime can't benefit from it, though. So that's the new sort of that's the new needle thread that they have there. And
They're
I could also see
insane.
this. Yeah, I could also see this as just a an olive branch during negotiations where the U.S. can say, hey, we'll let this one tanker through, and now what are you going to give us?
This man is making me nuts, my guy, because we are not even done with the reasons that he is trying to do a war, not do a war. Anytime, I think the craziest thing is anytime his accountability is coming his way in terms of like polls saying that the people are unhappy with this. Obviously, he's not negotiating a deal with the Strait of Hormuz. Obviously, Iran is putting out killer propaganda right now, and that's got to be eating at him. He brings out these like huge blown up pictures of the ballroom. Now
Oh yeah,
he's
I saw
launched
that.
the Trump library. The other day, they gave him a little participation trophy. Yesterday, I always think yesterday must have been a really horrible day, and maybe I'm not totally caught up on it yet because Ron DeSantis very quietly signed the legislation that will rename Palm Beach Airport the Donald John Trump Airport. which he
Oh
has always
no.
wanted, and the
What?
boulevard that goes to Palm Beach Airport, the President Donald John Trump Boulevard. Now, DeSantis did not hold a major signing the way that you would when you do something like this. It's going to cost Floridians somewhere, they say $5.5 million. I think it'll get higher than that to rebrand it. He wants it rebranded by July so that it can be part of America 250.
Oh
And
gosh.
it is just not lost on me that the airport that Jeffrey Epstein used to dock the Lolita Express at will now be named the President Donald John Trump Airport. And it's just, no matter how many things go wrong, for whatever reason, there are still people surrounding the president who want to coddle him and want to try and distract people. But you literally can't when we're feeling the effects that we are. And when he's saying things like, well, new military objective might be to send the Marines in to mine for uranium because Iran's not allowed to
Oh,
have uranium. So we're going to go take it from them.
yeah, so this is also, so this is I love geopolitics so much.
Yes.
And the reason that I love geopolitics is because they make me feel not crazy.
Yeah.
Because it sort of gives me at least another way of sort of discerning reality and sense making other than the crazy people saying crazy things. So,
Mm-hmm.
one of the crazy things that was said recently was, "Hey, we're going to go and take their uranium away." Awesome. I don't know what everybody thinks uranium is, but I think that there's sort of this general thought that like it's a little glowing rock that like is in a little holder, and
Mm-hmm.
you take it away like kryptonite, and they're like, now you don't have the uranium.
Right.
It is a very dense, very heavy yellow rock,
Mm-hmm.
and it can come in very powdered forms, and you also have depleted uranium. And so essentially what you're looking at is, if you imagine very, very heavy like gas containers. So they're probably
Mm-hmm.
about 3 to 4 feet tall, and they're stacked in a warehouse, and they're highly, highly radioactive.
Mm-hmm.
So imagine that you probably have a warehouse full of 1,000 of them. Now that warehouse is in the middle of a pile of rubble because we bombed the outside of that warehouse. And
Mm-hmm.
so now, if we want to actually go in and take the uranium, one, we're going to have to go mining to get that rubble off of that highly radioactive material. Two, we're going to have to probably spend months taking depleted uranium out and not necessarily finding the enriched uranium. So that'll take not
He
only,
thinks this is Indiana Jones and he's going
yeah,
to send Marines in there to like swap out the treasure and run out
just
like
get
a
the one
movie.
thing.
That's all
Yeah.
he has no idea what he's talking about or what he's doing. And there's another Marines to mine uranium. Yeah, National Guard to clean up trash. So much for respecting the military. I totally agree. Like it's just it's
Also, you
crazy.
need special gear. Like you need, or like uranium is, you make nuclear bombs out of it for a reason. It's like
Yeah.
it's not great, and we want the only highly enriched stuff. So
And we want to do the only way that this would ever happen is in cooperation with the host nation that has the stuff. Like you can't go
correct.
in there and do this delicate operation while under threat of bomb. And the thing that you sort of said it in the beginning and I skipped past it, but I want to come back to it now is why I went and fact checked the Lego Iran propaganda is because as silly as like you could have never made me believe that that would be something I would be doing is because it is so effective. And like people are saying, I've been taught my whole life that Iran and Russia are the bad guys. That came from
Mm,
television, from movies, from the WWE, right? Like
mm,
all of these things were very caricatured and presented to us as bad guy, bad guy. There is no good guy right now in the Iran Israel US war. It's all bad guys doing all bad guy stuff.
yeah,
And, but what needs to be true is when they're saying that there's a hotel that the US military is hiding out on and they're naming it, is that real? When they're saying that they destroyed the radar plane, is that real? When they're saying that they destroyed the cargo ships, is that real? And the Pentagon is not giving us answers. Some international reporting tends to kind of say, like, obviously that radar plane was destroyed. We've admitted it because you have to, like, it's
right.
too much. But as far as the cargo ships go, there's nobody there that can do the reporting. It's not like the BBC and CNN are just hanging out on Karg Island right now. Like they're not allowing people in. And as far as the people who are allowed into Israel, like we saw Aaron Burnett from CNN say, I thought it was really clever of her. She sort of looked off, which I'm like, she's looking at a producer, and then looked back at the camera and was like, Israel's only allowing us to say XYZ thing. To which people got on her ass and were like, because CNN state media and they're only going to answer to what Israel says. And it's like, no, when you're going into these places, you have to sort of play by their rules or you get kicked out entirely. So her thing
Yep.
was like, look, I'd love to answer that question. Right now, we can only answer these questions. It doesn't mean when she comes home, she doesn't answer more questions. The Iranian propaganda that came out, if like there are 5 claims, 2 of them I was able to verify did happen. That speaks to the Pentagon potentially lying to the American public about how many tragedies and casualties and lost assets there are. I have a contact in the DoD that is already saying the amount of helicopters, planes, and just general artillery that we have that's been lost or spent is not being reported accurately because, again, Hegseth has such a chokehold on what the press is even allowed to access. And I think that's the stuff that the American public deserves and needs to know, because your Congress is about to come back now and pass legislation that could give another $200 billion to the military, which is just going to piss off all of America, as it should. But it's because he's already spending it. It's not like we actually are getting a choice from Congress. It's costing us $1 billion a day for the war. This war will go well into the summertime. He's already planning ground operations while saying that we're wounding down, while saying that we have all these negotiations, while Iran is sending out Lego propaganda. It's
Well,
it's
and
an unnerving time.
yeah, and one of the things that I find really concerning about this is that it is not an investment in making us more safe. In fact,
Right.
it's the opposite, and it's not an investment in making our partners more safe. So, recently there we had to move a THAAD, which is a missile defense system, from South Korea into the Middle East. We are talking about taking material that is meant for Ukraine and then bringing that into the Middle East. And so, the difficulty, there's globalization and being the global security, the global guarantor of security is really a wolf by the ears. And I think
Mhm.
that a lot of American history truly is a wolf by the ears that we've
Mhm.
chosen to grab onto. And so part of being the guarantor of global security is, one, you get to set the rules, you get to set the framework, and you get to
Mhm.
benefit from that framework, specifically with the American dollar and with, being the sort of like hub of trade through the world and being
Mhm.
the economic anchor of the world. But at the same time, that means that you benefit most from global stability, your
Mhm.
version of global stability. And when you spread yourself really thin, like we have, then it becomes really, really difficult when you want to point your military apparatus at a single point,
Mhm.
because I don't see the reward here. The reward, according to the administration, from what I have seen, is not having a nuclear war, and that has not been demonstrated as something that was ever a concern before. There was
No,
never a
last summer
nuclear
we
threat.
destroyed it all, right? We got it all last summer. It's like they can't keep up with their own lies. And this
It
is the thing that
healed.
aggravates me too, also, like you're saying here. What's up with Donald Trump saying that his team is misleading him on war decisions? This is a person who will never take accountability for anything. He like we talked about yesterday, the president of the United States has more access to intel, briefings, and experts than maybe any other person in the world. He doesn't read the briefings. He doesn't understand. He's very bored by it. He's falling asleep in meetings. And then he says, "Oh, Israel lied to me. Oh, Pete's not giving me enough. Oh, the fake news media is making stuff up. Check out my ballroom." And it's like, dude,
Mm.
come on.
Yeah, and so the question really becomes, it's like, well, if the leadership is not going to be constrained by understood reality, then what are the constraints? And I think that you already identified a couple of these constraints. One, public opinion
Mhm.
seems to bite pretty hard. It seems like the biggest motivator has really been market fluctuations. And I think that's something that are that the administration is paying very, very close attention to.
Mhm.
And this happens with powerful people. They get surrounded by this sort of tumor of yes men,
Mhm.
and then because of that, they can do no wrong in their own mind, and that is a strategic problem. Like
Mhm.
ultimately,
There's another thing that he wants. I swear he just hears of something and he's like, yeah, we should have that. We should have everything. This is like an overconsumption. I mean, we've seen the way he decorates his home in the White House. It is hoarder level of consumption. Like he is just endlessly unsatisfied. And that is antimony. Antimony is a little mineral that we wrote about back in June of last year, talking about China seizing exports of antimony, which we
yeah,
need to produce ammunition and also some chips. I believe this is also in chips. So,
yes, yeah. Um,
antimony is another thing we'll hear a lot about. I know you talked about it a litit bit too.
yeah,
Is he
I've
still
been
on the antimony kick?
I don't know if he's still on the antimony kick, but it sounds like something that he heard recently and then just said. It is really important to sort of understand what are some strategic concerns in terms of this element and
Mhm.
other elements in general. So I've been on my channel. I've been doing a series called "That SH is Important." And it's just talking about the elements and items that are absolutely critically necessary for our national security that we may not think about, like gallium and antimony. So
Mhm.
antimony is a critical component in making ammunition, and it is really only sourced and processed in China right now. We previously had some antimony processing in the United States,
Mhm.
but again, a yin and yang of globalization. Hey, it can be produced somewhere else. Great, we'll produce it somewhere else for more cheap, for less money. But then we're not going to have the stuff to make bullets later on. It's also
Mhm.
used in
Night vision
radars and
goggles. Yeah.
say night vision goggles. I also think like fire retardants too,
Mhm.
and I'm pretty sure that China has like 90% of the production of it. China's pretty darn good at production and refining of minerals. And one of the reasons that we stopped doing the production and refining of minerals is because one, it's really expensive, and two, also
Mhm.
just like environmental concerns. So we were more than happy to sort of shuffle off the environmental concerns of deep mining and the cost of deep mining for into the developing world at that time. And now, when we don't have those elements, it's a national security threat.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, somebody also said in the chat here, Donald Trump is a Russian asset. He's destroying our reputation, depleting our stockpile, and opening sanctions for Russia to be able to sell oil. You're absolutely correct. Oddly enough, to bring up musical theater again, I saw the musical Chess this weekend.
oh yeah, right on.
How timely the musical Chess is. If you've
Isn't
not seen
One
it,
Night
it's
in
wonderful.
Bangkok in that?
One Night in Bangkok is in that.
Such a wild song.
Talking about yeah, the chess game that was played between the United States and Russia, and just like the way that is how we used to use soft power and diplomacy with Russia, and chess is like a literal like war proxy for them and whatnot. But in there, what they talk about is how this chess game between the US and Russia was really hinging on if the SALT II negotiations for nuclear disarmament during the Carter administration was going to happen. And it really relied on essentially the Russians winning the chess game because they wanted to be like the chess people. And just the fact that like a musical can teach you so much about geopolitical relations between Russia and the United States is amazing. And they added this new layer to the arbiter's character where he's also the narrator. And one of the things I thought was interesting they did is they didn't say it so directly, but they did allude to the fact that when the US won the match, right? And then the Russian defected, and there's all this other stuff. What did they start to do then, right? Ronald Reagan came into office. He was deeply anti communist. It really knocked Russia down a peg more than a Carter administration would have. And like how Russia was recovering from the Reagan administration anti communist type thing. And they were like, well, it's not lost on me that in 1983 is when they started investing in Donald Trump. I was
Mm.
like, ugh. So, I mean, it's It's sort of an open secret that Russia has invested in Donald Trump for years and years. They've bailed him out of many of his bankruptcies and issues. His son actually said at one point, Don Jr. said, I think it was in like 2015 when they were asking about how much of Trump's value is actually like backed by Russia. And they were like, a lot of it, like if not almost all of it, probably like more than 80% of his venture capital is backed by Russia. And I don't know if that's the same now or if he's got more Saudi money now, but Donald Trump was absolutely impacted in a positive way by the communists of Russia. And certainly Putin plays him like a fiddle. And I think that that is a dangerous thing, but it's not just him. Folks are also asking a lot about Israel and Israel's role in not just the decline of America's sort of place on the global stage when it comes to who we're allied with, what we're doing, how we're behaving. The fact that Trump seems extremely friendly with, Bolsonaro, and now he's like trying to take over Venezuela in some ways, and maybe Cuba and Russia, and very friendly with the far right in Europe through his relationship with Steve Bannon, and not friendly at all with NATO or any of our other major European allies, and will not criticize Netanyahu's decisions for anything, but is trying to blame him for like tricking him into a war. I have some concerns about what's going on in that way, and the fact that I think Israel tried to pull a little something with blocking the Vatican from Palm Sunday services at the holy sites this weekend, which has been sort of a dangerous thing to talk about, but we're going to do it anyway, because I think it's important for us to open a little space to talk about it and then close the space, recognizing that what happened on Sunday will result in massive anti-Semitism towards Jewish people who don't deserve it. Because when you make the Christians who have such a persecution kink actually persecuted and not able to do their Sunday service on their most holy time, you're going to see some backlash for that. If people think that Netanyahu is trying to control holy sites that are supposed to be shared cultural sites.
Yeah, and this is I don't think that there's anywhere in the world where where religious communities, ethnic communities, racial communities, and geopolitical interests are more intertwined than Israel. And this is one of the reasons that Israel is so difficult to talk about. My assessment, the talk that I gave this last weekend, is that the issues of race, religion, ethnicity are simply not the motivating factors for violence and conflict in the Middle East, but they are the most visible ones. Race, ethnicity, and religion are simply networks through which you can put the arms, influence, and money. And we're seeing these networks, these various networks, light up as they push against one another because there are outside influences that use these networks. And so the state of Israel is not something that you can conflate directly with the Jewish people. The state of the Vatican is not something that you can conflate with Christians at all. In fact, most Christians would not
Don't
recognize
like the Catholics, no.
Exactly. So, so because of that, it is really, really important to sort of see where the negotiation is actually happening on the ground here. And like I said, this is the place where it is the most apparent. You can see the exact same thing happening in the in restricting access to the Al-Aqsa Mosque. And so that is, from the Muslim point of view. It seems like there was an ability for basically heads of organizations to negotiate access to, it was the Holy Sepulchre,
the Pope called up Netanyahu and was like, I'm gonna give you about an hour, buddy, to go ahead and change your mind and let Pizza Bello in. All right, we're gonna go ahead and start there. And if you try to mess with us by Thursday, so the Catholics, we basically have so Sunday was Palm Sunday, right, to stop the procession of the most devout Catholics on the donkey with the palm fronds doing the whole thing. I as a person with like deep Catholic trauma, I was like, oh my God,
the
Vatican's
gonna
go nuts. The Vatican's
not the palms.
Not the palm fronds. That's like the best one. They love that one.
Honestly, then, like in terms of like happy Catholic holidays.
It's the happiest one. It's like the one they're most excited about and like has a little joy in it. And
Yeah.
I was like, "Oh no, they didn't stop the joy. It's the only joy we get." And
Right.
then my mom calls and she's like, "Oh no. Oh no, did you see what happened?" And she's like, "The Pope's going to call. They're going to be upset." The Prime Minister of Italy called, freaked
Yep.
out. Giorgia Meloni freaked out. And so my little Catholic mom, she was like, "Well, look, they better get this sorted by at least Thursday. Okay, Wednesday, Judas and the silver. There's not much that we do on Wednesday. That's the day of the betrayal. But by Thursday, I mean, he has to be able to get in there. And then of course it's Good Friday. And then of course,
Yeah.
and then Friday we have the candle, where they snuff the candle. They
This is
can't
deep
not do
lore.
that. They
Yeah.
have
Yeah. Wow.
So I was like, oh my God. So she's like, I'm so worried for those people if they go up against the Vatican, because that's what we're taught as Catholics, that like it's
Of course.
the be all end all. And I just think the Pope is on one this week. And I gotta say, I was like, I'm with you, Leo from Chicago,
Me
telling
too.
telling
Yeah.
America that God does not hear the prayers of warmongers. They make it no higher than your palace ceilings. Like saying to Netanyahu, you don't control the holy sites. Like this is unacceptable. And to folks who are like, the holy sites are shut down for everyone. They are not. The extra problem that didn't get super reported was Netanyahu was allowing 50 Jewish people a day into the sites, but not 50 Muslims, 50 Christians, 50, you know what I mean? Like there was no
Yeah.
evenness. If he had, first of all, it's not his decision to close it, but if there had been a negotiation amongst all those people who value those sites, UNESCO included, to say, look, we think it's actually like extremely dangerous and we have to do this, and they did it together, it would have been one thing. It's when one tries to control the other that I do worry, because the Vatican's looking for numbers. They're looking for
Yep.
their little resurgence time. And there is no apex predator greater in the religious communities than the Catholic Church, which endures and is destructive and militant, much more so than some of the other ones,
Yeah, it certainly has, if you look at the Catholic Church now versus the 1100s,
Right.
it's kind of the Hallmark card version of itself. But that isn't to say that it doesn't have political power. Remember, the Holy See, as it's called, is a
Mm,
sovereign state. It
mm,
in the smallest sovereign state in the world, but with an enormous amount of wealth and an enormous amount of power.
mm.
And you can see them even intervening on behalf of Cuba. So
Right.
Pope Leo from Chicago,
Love him.
is I know, right? I feel like nobody really made a big enough deal about how there was an American Pope. And wow, listen to how nationalist I just became.
Well, because he also is like, I mean, I was born there, but I'm
You're
kind of
right.
spent a lot of time in Peru. I think I'm.
He's had a shot of Malort though. Like that's
Oh
the thing
yeah,
that's important.
just hot dogs. Yeah,
That's right.
never had ketchup in his life for
That's
sure.
he's never even been in the same room with it. I think that it's really interesting again. Sort of looking at this network point of view of of
Mm,
of religion, where it's like you can see the network start to light up, and you can see it start to push back
mhm,
when it's threatened.
mhm,
Because and that's exactly what the Catholic Church is seeing right now. We're seeing it in Cuba, we're seeing it in Jerusalem, and we're seeing it elsewhere. And so it's and then we can also see that the power of Israel can bend and can negotiate in
mhm.
a time period where they are not known for doing that.
No, and are not very well liked globally right now, largely
Mm,
in part due to the decisions of Benjamin Netanyahu. But our one of my least favorite ambassadors, the one to Israel, Mike Huckabee,
the huckster.
deeply Christian nationalist, deeply weird. Told the BBC on Sunday that the move to stop the cardinal from accessing the church was difficult to understand or justify before crediting the Israeli government for resolving the matter. So this is the thing. They like talk out both sides of their mouth because he wants to remain so aligned to whatever loyalty it is that he has to his ambassadorship or to Israel. And he's like, well, they shouldn't have done that, but they fixed it really quick. And it's like, but why did they fix it? They fixed it
Yeah,
because the Vatican and Giorgia Meloni basically was like, yo, I'll send the Roman guard right back up there. Like, it's going to be crazy if you do
just a
this.
bunch of Swiss guards
Yeah.
like
They
with
were
their big
like,
axes.
yeah. So, in their cool outfits. And then
Yeah.
the US State Department later told the BBC that it encouraged the Israeli government to facilitate the safe observance of Holy Week, recognizing the difficulty of security in this time. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni criticized the lack of access as an offense not only against believers, but against every community that recognizes religious freedom. French President Emmanuel Macron had likewise condemned the move and said it came in the context of the worrying increase of violations of the status of holy places in Jerusalem. Freedom to hold religious rights in Jerusalem must be ensured for all religions, he said on X. And then Pope Leo, of course, came out and said that he wanted to pay tribute to Christians in the Middle East who are suffering the consequences of terrible conflict and in many cases cannot fully live the rights of these holy days. Leo also had a little bit to say about Israel passing a law that says that you can hang Palestinians for is it like traitorous crimes? I didn't get a
So
chance to read the whole thing.
yeah, and it's definitely one
It's
of
just
those.
very spooky to me. Like
Yeah.
anti-Semitism is at an all-time high. It is not the Jewish people. Like Sammy was on yesterday, and she's like, "Listen, there is like yes, Jewish people in Israel in the crossover, but it's also like some people are just born Jewish and they don't support any of what's going on here, but they will catch the repercussions for this." And it's like it's just such a rough, awful spot that this man has us all in.
Yeah, I mean, I think that one of the difficulties with the having a community by the by the sort of control is the fact that the Jewish people are now sort of appointed all experts and ambassadors at the
Mm,
exact same time. And I mean, I've experienced this on a smaller level. Being an American who lives and works in the Middle East with some frequency, where it's like you sit down for tea with somebody in Iraq, and then they're like, "So explain it. Like, why is it all happening?" And you're like, they don't ask me
right,
personally
right.
about what to do next. And I was 8 whenever that happened. um but I have a good deal of empathy for not only the people who simply don't agree with the Israeli government, but the people who are actually living in Israel,
Hmm.
and they've been through an enormously traumatic event
Hmm.
recently, and then subsequently their government started to inflict trauma on not only its regional neighbors but also
Hmm.
its near abroad. So with that being said, what the law passed by the Knesset was that people who are convicted of a crime against the state of Israel that results in death, I believe. So of course this is a pretty broad definition,
Hmm.
and that is always pretty spooky when you have a very broad definition of a pretty intense outcome.
Hmm.
So if you are convicted of committing one of those crimes, then you can be put to death, and you can be put to death within 90 days by hanging. The law is written in such a way that it would be remarkably unlikely that a Christian, or pardon me, that a Jew would ever be convicted of this thing. And so some of the pushback that's happening through the international community is basically saying, well, look, you have made your, the brand that you have previously put forward throughout the world is that you are the, functioning democracy of the Middle East, the only functioning democracy of the Middle East, and the country that Europe and the rest of the world that operates on the rules-based national order can understand and interoperate with, and that's why we want to work with you.
Hmm.
But as you are starting to tend more towards intense authoritarianism and expansionism, you're not beating the allegations of looking less and less like a functional democracy every single day.
Yeah.
And so the lack of the appeals process, hugely important to touch on here. The 90-day execution period, and then on top of that, hanging. it-
It's
the
so
fact that that's coming back as a
extra.
thing.
I know
Yeah.
it's so like it's on purpose to do it like that. Like it's meant to bring back the idea of like public shaming, public hanging, like some sort of like draconian like way of doing things to bring it to the least humane possible place. But we have one more topic for our next 5 minutes before I see Cam is here from Courier Newsroom. And Cam has a banger report out about Jeffrey Epstein and the Department of Justice not investigating his money laundering schemes. So in 5 minutes, we have Cam. So stick around for
I
that.
think I saw that. Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's incredible. It's incredible. And I just think it's so smart to take an angle that's not just the sex crimes angles, because while that is extremely important, it was the enterprise of Epstein that led to the sex crimes and vice versa. So we'll have
Yeah.
Cam in 5 minutes. But thing I saw on your page, and if you're not following the Under Report, please follow the Under Report so that you know what I know. I think this is what we're showing up. We're creating a new group chat of friends so that everybody could just do a little. But now back in 2017, there was
I forgot about that.
this thing in 2017 where the Swiss were making medical drones, right? The autonomous cardboard airplanes that could carry medical supplies. But not to be outdone, the Japanese now have fighting drones that they can use that cost no money and that you talked about. Tell me about these cardboard drones.
Yeah, so drone warfare is,
Yeah.
and also I should say that these drones are specifically dual use, right? So they which is great for the development of drones because that means that they can be used in peacetime as well. It also means that the company is not going to be just a wartime company. So I think it's called Air Kamui is the company, and basically it's a drone that you can build in. You can make the framework for in a cardboard factory itself. So this is you do not need a new factory for it, which is huge in terms of creating dual use products. And it can be carried in a backpack and assembled in under 5 minutes. Amazing technology. Good job, those guys. Now, I some really good questions that I've heard. What about when it rains? Well, drones don't typically fly when it
Right.
rains. Also, I had one comment say, Sergeant, we've got drones coming in. He's like, get the hose, the big one. Um, so
Mhm.
so yeah, like this is obviously there are difficulties with the making a drone out of cardboard, but what this tells us is that the race to lower the price of drone production and to increase the ability to transport drones
Mhm.
is resulting in some dramatic effects where the price has plummeted from around $20,000 a couple of years ago to now $2,000 and some cardboard
Mhm.
right now. So this is the next iteration. We'll see if they become fielded in any theater of combat. We'll also see if they're fielded in, I just talked with a dude yesterday on this weekend. I was talking on a panel with him and he's delivering pizzas by drone. And I'm like, that's great. I hope that like that's awesome.
I don't know if I trust that. No, the
It,
only good pizza campaign that there ever was when Domino's had the pothole guarantee, where if there was a pothole in your town, you could call Domino's and they would come and fill it. It was a very short campaign. It
I've
was
never heard of this. This is
hysterical.
amazing.
It was outstanding. And they really did it. They had like a Domino's themed, like little truck that came out and filled potholes in town so that your pizza wouldn't get messed up in delivery. And I think that was like the best possible crossover of capitalism and mutual aid benefits. I was like,
I'm
do it.
so here for the yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. Like, where's the Slack being like, yeah, we're gonna plant a bunch of trees in your community. That would
Let's
be
do it.
amazing.
That would be amazing. This is what we need to fight for. The Momdaniification of the rest of the government. Just millennials in charge, personally shoveling snow, personally filling potholes. Was great. But
Yeah, where's our cottagecore government?
this is what we need, a little cottagecore government. Well, depending on how inflation and all the looming recession go, we might be getting victory gardens again. We'll see.
Oh man, yeah, I've been seeing, I mean, there's all these various metrics, like there's the Pentagon pizza metric, and then but then there's the Walmart metric, which is pretty important. And the
Mm,
Walmart metric is blinking red right now. And the Walmart metric is this idea of basically like how many out of a basket of goods that you could purchase elsewhere, how many people are purchasing the Walmart version of that.
Oh,
And it
interesting.
yeah, and it basically is an indication of what the sort of general economic health is. And the wild thing is I was like, "Oh, wow, that's weird," because I also went to Walmart like for the first time in probably
Mhm.
maybe like 5 years just this last weekend. I was like, "These prices are awesome. This is not
It is
sponsored."
shocking.
Yeah,
It is
this is not
shocking.
sponsored by Walmart at all, but I was like, you realize that you are also intermeshed in this economic system,
Mhm.
and you're following your own incentives, and sometimes you end up getting like a really stellar deal for some camping lights at Walmart.
Yeah, absolutely. Shout out to the podcast Too Many Tabs, my friend Alex Perlman, who does Too Many Tabs with his wife, hysterical show also. And yeah, start up your community gardens. It's a good thing to do, and it'll bring you
Yeah.
some peace. But we're gonna switch over now. Are you gonna stick around for Epstein, or do you got to drop out?
I want to hear
Okay.
a little bit of Epstein, but I may have to drop out.
All right, sounds good. So bringing to the stage now is journalist and just generally cool dude, Cameron Stevenson from the Courier Newsroom, independent newsroom. Hello, friend.
Hey, good to see you, V. How you doing?
I'm doing, the best I can. I created a live every day for mental stability for
Yeah,
myself.
that
And
seems
my
like the
friends
best
decided
approach.
they wanted to be on it. And so now I'm glad that you're here too. And they're like, who's your producer? I'm like, me, baby. It's me. But Cameron, you did a really interesting piece on Jeffrey Epstein's and the DOJ not investigating Epstein's alleged money laundering business. Can you give us like a little highlight on that? What made you think to even go in this direction?
Yeah, no, definitely. So I mean, I've been going into Epstein's finances for about a year and a half now, trying to get different documents, now going through the Epstein files and seeing what we can find from that.
Mm-hmm.
And my report from Friday is a combination of something I found in the files and then that was confirmed by the depositions of Richard Kahn and Darren Indyke.
Mm.
Those two, they are essentially Trump, not Trump. They're essentially Epstein's money men. They handled the financial comings and goings. They kind of maintained the day-to-day business operations of his
Oh,
entire
Cameron, people
empire.
can't hear you well, hun. You got to get a little closer to
Oh,
the mic.
shoot. I'm sorry.
There you go.
How's this?
All
I'm
right,
also
start
going to
again.
drop off and watch offline. But
Okay.
Cameron, lovely to see you.
Yeah,
Looking
right back
forward
at you.
to watching this. Maybe I don't want my mic to get involved. I'll
All right,
see you
see you later.
guys. Bye.
Thanks.
All right, he's out. You're in.
All right. Let me talk a little louder and
There we
see
go.
if I
Much
can concise
better.
that up. So Epstein's money men, they basically handled all of his bank accounts. They did these large cash withdrawals. They made sure that things were financially running smoothly so Epstein could run the sex trafficking operation that he did.
Mm.
They were deposed by Congress last month,
Mm-hmm.
and both Kahn and Indyke testified that they had never been contacted by government agents. They never got questioned by the FBI. They were never interrogated by the DEA. Nothing. And this kind of goes hand in hand with an internal FBI correspondence I found in the Epstein files, where the FBI confirmed that they never investigated, they never searched Epstein's business offices, that they went into his house, but they never searched for his financial documents.
Why would they do that, Cam?
Well,
Why would they decide that a fella who was running a sex crimes empire and geopolitical interference shouldn't have his business offices checked? Is this just like incompetence or intentional?
you know, it, I'm going to lean on a little bit of both. I
Mm-hmm.
think there's definitely some incompetence where there were 7 different organizations, federal organizations investigating Epstein. There's the FBI, DEA,
Mm-hmm.
like I mentioned, the Financial Crimes Network. They all had their own siloed files on him.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think a lot of it was them not being, you can also see in the FBI correspondences that they were being overly careful not to step on each other's toes and impede someone else's investigation, which means that they cut theirs own short. But then there's the obvious, is that during this time period, Donald Trump was the president of the United States. And
Right.
he's not interested in finding evidence that would implicate his friends, his co-conspirators of Epstein. What he's interested in is any blackmail that might be found on Epstein's residence. And so while his residence was searched very thoroughly, his finances weren't touched at all.
Jesus. So I'm guessing that this Department of Justice is certainly not going to pick it up now. This will be something that would have to be like a future administration with a less corrupt DOJ might be able to get into it. But is there any like congressperson, senator, anybody who's come forward to say like, we need to get on this?
Oh yeah, there's a handful. I mean, in theory, it's a unanimous decision because everyone voted to release the Epstein files. But in reality, I would say 99.9% of Republicans have said that we just need to move on and case closed. In the Senate, Ron Wyden has been doing a financial investigation into Epstein for about 5 years, going on 6, where he has found a lot. But he's been, blocked by both the Biden and Trump administrations on accessing Treasury documents that actually give us that paper trail, that money trail that can tie Epstein to people like Leon Black, to tie his bank accounts to sanctioned banks in Eastern Europe, and connect him to other people who financially benefited. Then in the House, we've got Summer Lee, who actually filed articles of impeachment against Pam Bondi. And I spoke with her last week, and she's pretty confident that they have enough support to actually impeach her, which means her replacement would only get nominated based on the premise of doing what Bondi didn't, which is actually go into the Epstein files and find justice for the victims.
That is very, very interesting. Not lost on me that Biden also did not release these Epstein files. There's like Joe Biden's a very nice man, and I had like good and bad times with him. But I think the Epstein thing and the gentleman's handshake that occurs at all levels of the elite and of the legacy politicians and their inability to feel shame or sorrow. They're all so worried that even if they weren't a part of the sex crimes, somehow they'll be held accountable for the legacy that has been left and by how much went undone. And I think it's unfortunate that, Biden's White House did not release the Epstein files in the way that they should have. A lot of people will say, well, because Ghislaine was still on trial, and I'll give you that to a point. But there are 2 things that I could criticize Biden on. It's not doing the TikTok deal properly and not handling the Epstein files properly. It's just maddening.
Yeah. And I think that, tangent, but I think that all goes back to having Merrick Garland as the Attorney General, whose goal was to make justice work as slowly as possible in between 2 Trump administrations, whose goal is to eradicate justice completely.
Right. Why was Merrick Garland like that? Do we know? Like he just...
I want to say he was either a Republican or, he was, historically he was Obama's like choice as the moderate Supreme Court pick. And I think it goes back to what you said a minute ago, is that he essentially just wanted to keep business running as usual. The old 2020 Biden promise of, we're going to get things back to the way they were. And again, that, that doesn't penalize people in a capitalist society for making money, as long as they're paying their taxes.
It is it is that gentleman's handshake thing again. This I want to get along situation that only benefits the worst people in society and never ever comes the way of like giving anybody who's decent the benefit of the doubt. One thing that I had Tara Palmieri on last week, and she's obviously covered Epstein for so long, and I experienced this also, which is men asking, when are you going to move on? And her thing was, nobody asked Bob Woodward when he was going to move on from Watergate. I mean, he made a whole career to this day on exposing that. And that was like an eighth of how bad this is. Like, we're not even 2 where we know everything. We only have 3% of the files, and they continue to, block it. As a man, do you find that other men don't want to talk about this as much as you do? Or do you feel like it's...
No, I feel like a lot of men, male reporters in our industry are, they don't justify the sexual abuse, but it's almost as if that's taken out of the equation. I mean, for what I try and focus on as far as finances, the whole premise of it is that this was used to fund sex trafficking, for him to abuse women and girls, to bring people across the country, to put them in financially dependent situations where they had to rely on Epstein in order to survive. But a lot of times in other people's investigations, I see where that is discounted, discredited. victims in most reporting, I feel like, are given whatever the opposite of the benefit of the doubt is, where those are, vague accusations, unclaimed, unbased. But then other things like Epstein being a financial whiz, which he wasn't, there's no evidence to suggest he was good at money at all. He wasn't certified in anything. That he's been given the benefit of the doubt. And I think that's just because he's a man who says he's good at something, so people tend to believe him.
They want to create lore about him. When we got into the Epstein files, the very first thing I did was search all my old bosses because I worked in culinary in New York City. And I was like, this bitch is in here. I fucking know it. I know this chef is in here. I know this one's in there. And some of them were. And one of the things I was surprised by was Be Our Guest Restaurant Group was sold to Steven Starr's restaurant group. And Jeffrey Epstein was deeply involved in the negotiations of this, which went horribly. It was one of the worst acquisition. It was going through it, living through it. Be Our Guest was considered if you trained there, you could go anywhere. They were the best of the best. And then they were selling to Steven Starr, but just the negotiations, the way that Steve, who was the CEO of Be Our Guest, had to remain on, even though that didn't make sense. And he was bumping up against the Starr team all the time. Jeffrey Epstein was the ombudsman between these two entities. And it was crazy to look at the way that his emails were playing out to my lived experience working at this restaurant group and experiencing all of the horrible choices they kept making, and then being oh my God, it was Epstein making those horrible choices 20 years later in my life. It's just unreal, the amount of places that this man
that's
showed
gotta be a
up.
surreal experience to just and even just one thing that's interesting about all these emails is just seeing the inner workings of people who see themselves as the shapers of society. I mean, Epstein, by all accounts, considered himself someone who could manipulate culture and change how society operates. I mean, there's been, in Courier, our other podcasts have done some stuff on just how involved he was in 4chan and trying to develop gamer culture. It's just unreal how they think. They really don't see us as people. They see us as, animals, as lemmings, as things that can be controlled and manipulated, which is why, by extension, they talk so casually about trafficking women and girls, because that's just another transaction for them.
They really did revel in the taboo, the idea that they were above everything in every way, whether that was their financial dealings, whether that was the fetishization of children that they decided was okay for their group of people, just the not paying their bills. The amount of not paying bills that rich people do is freaking wild. And he has had, to this day, a lasting impact on American culture, and his ideals are still living. Steve Bannon inherited his right-wing paranoia and his obsession with Israel and his obsession with the Supreme Court and stacking it in favor of men who were like him, right? He liked Kavanaugh so much. We did a report on it because he saw Kavanaugh as somebody who might be sympathetic to men like Jeffrey Epstein as they were going through their totally egregious sex crimes trials and whatnot, and trying to shape America as a more patriarchal place.
Yeah. Well, and you can see that if anyone's interested in watching the 13-hour-long depositions of Khan and Indike, that's their mentality too, is that, their old boss, he did some bad things, but he really got an unfair shake in the media. And, people mischaracterized him. They feel like that Epstein was this very generous, benevolent guy who apparently also did some bad stuff that they weren't involved with at all.
Yeah, so he liked to sleep with children. He was so nice, though. He always helped me when I needed something. They cannot separate the fact that all of the help he provided any of these people was based on money laundering, international crime, and his freak ass fetish shit.
Yeah, it's and you can, you see that in so many other interactions. He was very kind and friendly with Leon Black, a disgraced financier who, according to court documents, raped and beat women that he paid Epstein to have contact with. But as soon as Leon Black started to cut him off, Epstein started to squeeze him a little bit. Started to pressure him, and it's not. He wasn't doing goodness out of benevolence. It's so that he could have an upper hand on people. And And we see that
His
play out.
empire has been inherited by many people, maybe not directly, but certainly folks picked up where he left off. If we look at Steve Bannon with the right-wing talking points and the attempt to create like the manosphere and all the stuff that he's got going on, this obsession with the American alliance to Israel over all else, this obsession that Jared Kushner has with developing the Middle East for tourism and for American companies, like that was an Epstein thing. And it's just... it's not going away. And so many people want it to go away because they're sort of humiliated about the sex crimes, or we live in like a very purist, like prude country where they don't want to have to hear about it. And it's like, I'm sorry, this like, it's just going to be part of it. What do you think about this limited series that's being made with Laura Dern? Have you heard about that?
I've heard a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, I know there's some good docu-series on Epstein that delve into, you know, victims and how things were uncovered. And I think it's really good that they are hopefully going to be highlighting the Miami Herald's work in keeping a steady drumbeat on what's going on, because without their reporting 20 years ago, we wouldn't be where we are today.
No,
I am a little concerned about
an award. Julie K. Brown has never won an award from any journalism, any media, any victims' rights advocates, and that's crazy that she's not been recognized.
Yeah, I mean, for all we know, she'll get an Oscar or something for helping write the script before she gets a Pulitzer.
Right. I'm concerned about how they will do this, just watching what happened with like some of the murder documentaries that came out recently. And people were like, Jeffrey Dahmer is hot. Like, who's going to play Epstein and how will he be played?
Yeah. See, that's the thing is are they going to glorify him as a person? Or are they going to focus too much on, you know, the things that he thought made him important and powerful? I mean, is it going to have the Wolf of Wall Street or Sopranos effect where people see someone doing terrible things?
Yeah.
But exactly. But it's given this Hollywood glorification. So people are like, all right, you know, this guy's all right. Or even Trump, you know, he's done terrible things, but people love him for it because of the way he's been glorified and the way he's been able to portray himself in the media.
I do worry coming off of that Kennedy love story in the 90s, and people having such a like nostalgia for the 90s and how it was just such the perfect time, that setting his story in the 90s in the perfect time that we've all sort of created will soften the blow for how people think things were. And I do wonder who will play Epstein in this. If it's Zac Efron, then we know that we're totally off the rails. Like we've gone completely wrong here.
Yeah. That's we got to keep an eye on casting and hope that there's someone actually involved who can help with the script.
What other kind of stuff are you working on right now? Where can people find your work?
Yeah, I always forget to plug stuff. So my writing is at Below the Beltway. It's a Substack. I come out with something every Friday, and then everything else, I'm the national reporter for Courier Newsroom. So if you just any social platform at Courier Newsroom, that's where we are.
I dig it.
I've got a few other things that I've got in the works right now. I'm going to be covering the Supreme Court's birthright citizenship case. That's another thing I've been following since it first came out last January. A little, I don't know if this is a teaser, but it could be a whole nother conversation. But essentially a lot of what he's been arguing in court, the Trump administration, is that they want to base citizenship off of loyalty to the president. That essentially they want to be able to revoke not just immigrant citizenship, but anyone who they feel isn't properly loyal to the president of the United States.
Not to the Constitution, to the president.
Yes, that's what they're arguing. They're using courts. There's a case they're using with a Native American from the 1800s, where essentially that they said, I'm a citizen of my tribe, but I want to be a citizen of the United States. And the Supreme Court ruled, you're loyal to your tribe. So we see that as a sovereign state. And the Trump administration is trying to use that to argue everyone, just citizenship in general. They want to rewrite the 14th Amendment. So I'm going to be digging more into that. And then I do have some really, really interesting things coming out about Epstein's finances in the next couple weeks. I'm just getting all my ducks in a row right now, but there's a lot there to be uncovered, especially with the depositions we're seeing, from Khan, Indike, the Clintons. Everything they say under oath is something that if they're lying, they can be held in contempt for perjury. And so
Right.
I'm going through their transcripts to find any discrepancies.
You got Summer Lee's phone number? I have her phone number. I'm like, please get that to Summer Lee right away. I mean, she's like one of the most brave women in Congress right now, coming out just like totally has had it with what's the shenanigans that are going on.
Yeah, no,
Insane.
she's Summer Lee's incredible. She whenever I go to interview her, I always end up staying an extra 30 minutes, and we're just
She's
talking
really
about all
smart.
sorts of things because she's on top of it. She has a very intimate knowledge and is passionate.
God, can you imagine if they win this case, right? And so now you have to take a loyalty pledge to the president, which happens to be Donald Trump right now. How MAGA would deal with taking a loyalty pledge to any of the Democratic candidates if they were to win in 2028? Can you imagine like your crazy uncle pledging to AOC, or your crazy, or Pete Buttigieg or John Ossoff or any of these people? Like they would never do it. It's not going to hold. This is king shit,
I would
Cam.
hope
This is king shit.
Right? No, I just hope that people will have that same outrage if this is what they try to do this time around, because we shouldn't have that level of loyalty to any president. We should be loyal to our country, to our countrymen, countrywomen, and those people who are in charge are really just there to serve us.
Do you think that if he gets this done this week, question from Kevin here, he could build a UFC cage match and have you do Hunger Games for your citizenship? We're not that far off.
You know, we joke about this, but the entire reason ICE is in airports is because someone called into a Fox News show and
Linda from Arizona. Yep.
Right. Yeah. From my home state. So let's be careful with how public we make those suggestions, because that could percolate and then become policy.
Another great question. If they revoke my U.S. citizenship, what am I going to do? Get deported to my reservation in Oklahoma? Maybe. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, or if we're looking for a darker approach, they are building, 10,000 capacity concentration camps across the country.
Right.
So there's a lot of places they can put people. Not realistically, but I see it playing out as if the Supreme Court does do something like this. It's more to the extent where they quietly start revoking citizenship behind the scenes around election period, so that when you go to vote, they check your ID if that law passes, and boom, you're not a citizen, you can't vote, turn you away.
And the ability to denaturalize people who have become naturalized citizens, it just sort of gives him, he has this obsession with the amount of immigrants that he wants to deport. And he can't get to that number because there aren't as many people illegally in this country as he believes that there are. So he has to create new illegal immigrants, in his words. And he could do that through denaturalization, taking away protected status, all the stuff he's kind of been working on already.
Right. Ugh. I mean, he started immigrants in general, undocumented, documented, legal residents, citizens, people who have been naturalized. It's it's just an expansion to keep filling those cells, because that's apparently all they care about.
Geez. Well, Cam, tell folks again where they can find you, and hopefully you'll come back and explain the Supreme Court thing to us if it happens again.
Yeah. No, I'd love to. It's been great. But yeah, on Substack, you can find me at Below the Beltway. On TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, everything else, I report through Courier Newsroom.
Very good. Awesome. Thanks, Cameron. We will see you all soon.
Good to see you, V.
Bye, friends.
We'll talk soon.
Oh my gosh, what a crazy show we had today. I hope you guys learned a ton. This will be available for rewatch. It takes maybe like 20 minutes to get loaded up on YouTube, and I appreciate y'all being here. Great audience today. Great comments from people. For folks who are wondering why only comments from YouTube show up on the screen, it's just the software that I use, StreamYard, so that I can send the stream out to everywhere. But it only allows me to see the YouTube comments and bring them into the stage. So if you were watching on Instagram, or you're watching on Substack or on TikTok, that's why the comments are oftentimes disabled over there. And then we tell you to come over here so that you can be a part of the conversation. And that is the point. Like, I started this show literally over one weekend with no plan, no producer, simply because I felt like I needed a place to go every day to be able to talk to my friends in real life. We have the group chats and stuff, but it doesn't feel like enough. I think right now we're all so desperate for connection, for a routine, for consistency, for good information, and to be in a space where we can't be censored. Like, it's real fun when I get to, go out and do stuff on TV or in major magazines and stuff, but this space that we have live can really be something that we're working on together. And that's what I hope it continues to grow into. So I'm glad that y'all are here, and we will be back tomorrow. Tomorrow we're live from 10 to 11:30 a.m. again. That's Eastern. Tomorrow we have Amanda's Mild Takes, who is a historian and an activist, who will be talking about what went on with No Kings. We'll be talking about the Supreme Court stuff that's going on, and also like when in history has the United States sort of faced the challenges that we're facing right now? Because while it feels like we always live in the worst time, it's not. And there were issues with the Monroe Doctrine, and now we have the Don Roe Doctrine. There were issues with trying to denaturalize citizens and Native Americans and keep them from citizenship and the right to vote in the past. How did we deal with it then? How do we deal with it now? So thank you, Dust Bunnies. I will see you tomorrow at 10 a.m.